Hi everyone, this is Steve Kennedy, Engineering, Risk, and Quality Manager at USLBM. Today I'll be taking a quick look at lumber grades, species, and substitutions. Here you can see a grade stamp on the left. The species is SPF or spruce pine fir. It is kiln dried, typically 19% for trusses. It is heat treated, that's what the HT stands for. It comes from mill number 10. The grading agency is NGLA, and the grade of the material is stud. Over here on the right, you can see the species is SPFS, or spruce pine fir south. That is a different grade than just spruce pine fir. Also on this grade stamp, you can see that it has a 1/4 inch easy edge or 1/4 inch radius on the edges of the board. The truss plate standard calls out for what happens on the species of lumber if you need to substitute from what the design says. All these values need to be the same or greater if you're going to be substituting from what the design says. Here's a table from NDS that lists the different species of SPF and SPF South. As you can see, SPF has a specific gravity of 0.42, and the South has only a specific gravity of 0.36. Now, the bending though for South is 1300, but for just SPF, it's 1250. So you cannot substitute these because the values are different and one's higher and one's lower. And as you can see here again, the South on this grade stamp. Now the SPF has a much greater FC perp, and that's typically what we're looking for when we're looking for spruce pine fir, is a larger value for compression perpendicular for bearing capacity. And also the 0.42 allows us to have maybe a little bit smaller plates than the 0.36. Here's the same type of tables, but for Douglas fir. You can see here we have Douglas fir larch, Douglas fir larch north, and Douglas fir south. Now these values are all different and you cannot really substitute them. If the truss designed for Douglas fir or Douglas fir north, you cannot sub any other material. It must match what's on the design. So green lumber is something that typically we do not want to use in trusses. Normally we want the moisture content at 19% or less when the trusses are manufactured. So these grade stamps, you can see that it's calling out green lumber. Now you'll notice the Doug fir larch and also Doug fir north on this grade stamp. Here's a list of the machine stress rated. Now typically machine stress rated you can substitute as the number goes up. So the higher the number, the better the value. However, you cannot substitute species because the FC perp is different and the specific gravity. Now here are the MEL grades. If you look at like M20, it's 2100, and then M21 is only 1950. So this is different than the MSR. You cannot increase a higher number for a lower number automatically. You also have to watch out for like at M32, the lumbers drastically go down for the values of the lumber. So again, no substitution for MELs from low to high. You would have to look at the design, and the species comes into the same play. You would have to match the species or go higher on the specific gravity. Here's a lumber grade for the Euro, and typically, in my opinion, you do not want to use a Euro grade or any grade from other countries in your trusses or any other grade stamp. The grades are way different over in Europe. So here the grade stamp is Australia, sorry. But you don't want to use the other grade stamps from Euro. You can see the values are way different. And in this case, you cannot substitute like a number 2 from Euro into a number 1, number 2 in the United States for spruce pine fir or spruce pine fir South. The numbers just do not match. So until the plate companies get this in their software, no substitutions at all for Euro grades. One other thing I wanted to bring up is the treatment. So if you are going to be using treated lumber in trusses, corrosion becomes an issue. So because of the chemicals in the treatments, you want to watch out for that. So we want these types of treatments to be used if we're going to be using treated lumber in trusses. For the most part, nothing else. Now, we could possibly use some of the other ones, but it would require stainless steel plates, and that cost of that is prohibitive. So just these chemicals should be used when using treated lumber in trusses. Incised lumber typically is not used for trusses either. So incising is when they cut little grooves in trusses, little grooves in the lumber, so the penetration of the chemicals get down farther into the wood. So incising lumber, not good for trusses. Now typically it could be used for walls or wall plate material and stuff, and that would be a problem. If you have any questions on lumber substitutions, grade stamps, or species, feel free to drop me an email or give me a call. Thanks.